Welcome to US Daily News Channel. Russia has completely withdrawn from Chernihiv in the north of Ukraine and the capital, Kyiv. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine said yesterday that more than 30 settlements were liberated near Kiev, and it was stated that Kyiv is completely under control. However, US sources underlined that Russia's withdrawal was for the purpose of regrouping. In this context, the USA and NATO tightened their measures in Eastern Europe and sent additional troops. In addition, 40,000 troops from NATO joint forces were officially deployed to NATO allies around Ukraine. Top officials of the Ukrainian army did not agree with the view that Ukraine could withstand Russian airstrikes with the available means and emphasized the need for more air defense systems and military equipment. The United Kingdom, the United States, Sweden and the Czech Republic sent additional military ammunition, coastal defense systems, anti-ship missiles and air defense systems to Ukraine upon this call. With the shipments increasing day by day, the USA brought the number of its troops in Europe to the point of the Cold War long before. It is stated that the number of US troops in Europe has exceeded 100,000 and that even more troops will need to be sent. Pentagon officials announced that US troops sent to the periphery of Europe for special missions may also need to stay in the region for a while. In fact, some units are thought to be permanent in Eastern Europe and especially in Poland. New information has been shared about the troops of the 82nd Airborne Division in Poland and the Navy units deployed in the Mediterranean. NATO has recently increased its military presence on the Russian border almost 8 times. There are 9,000 NATO soldiers in Estonia, 9,100 in Latvia, 20,800 in Lithuania, 130,500 in Poland, 15,100 in Slovakia, 24,800 in Hungary, 79,300 in Romania and 26,900 in Bulgaria. At the same time, a very serious shipment of warplanes and armored vehicles was carried out in the region. In recent shipments, the US has sent 20 AW-64 Apache attack helicopters to Latvia. The largest share in the NATO task force belongs to the US Army, and with the latest statements, the presence of the US Army in Europe is over 100,000 units. In January, it was announced that the US military presence in Europe was around 80,000. With subsequent deployments, this number is estimated to be over 110,000 troops. Czech Republic sent 58 armored tracked personnel carriers with the approval of Germany. The UK will ship Harpoon anti-ship systems and Starstreak sent air defense systems 1 week ago. With thousands of troops deployed to Europe in response to the US-Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Navy is increasing its presence in the region. The U.S. Department of Defense announced on Monday that 6 EA-18G Growlers, comprising 240 aircrew and maintenance personnel, will travel to Spangdahlem, Germany, as part of the 14,000 troops the U.S. has committed to reassure NATO. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby told reporters that the electronic attack drone would not perform any scrambling missions. They're not being sent because of some type of perceived acute threat or a specific event that has occurred, he said. They're deployed. As we've said from the start, the Secretary wants to keep options open. So this should be nothing less than a prudent decision to continue to reassess our force stance on NATO's eastern flank. Kirby said it would be up to U.S. European Command whether the jets would fly asset missions, as did the F-35s deployed to the Baltic states in late February. This latest announcement brings the total mobilization of U.S. troops since February to about 11,800. Previous U.S. military deployments include 4,700 soldiers from the 82nd Airborne Division to Poland, 300 soldiers from the 18th Airborne Corps to Germany, 1,000 soldiers from the 2nd Cavalry Regiment to Romania, 800 soldiers from the 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team to Latvia, 100 F-35 Lightning II aircrew and maintenance personnel to Estonia, Lithuania and Romania, 100 AW-64 Apache aircrew and maintenance personnel to Poland and the Baltic states, 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, 3rd Infantry Division and its supply unit to Germany 3,800, 150 airmen from a squadron of KC-135 Stratotankers from Fairchild Air Force Base, Washington, 40 members of an Army Air Support Operational Unit to Romania and Poland, 300 ammunition and maintenance soldiers to Germany, 300 members of the Army's 5th Corps to Germany and Poland. Although the Pentagon was unable to determine how many soldiers there were, thousands more soldiers were put on high alert to be deployed. The Pentagon announced a total of 14,000 activations, 7,000 more for individual nations and 7,000 more for the NATO response force, leaving more than 2,000 soldiers to be called into support. Our focus right now is what's happening in Ukraine, whether additional temporary deployments are needed to support the eastern flank granted, a senior defense official told reporters on Friday. In the Mediterranean, Navy planes aboard the Harry S. Truman ship are also making air police sorties in Eastern Europe. General Todd Wolters also said he's consulted with his Pacific counterpart on the Western response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and what it means for Taiwan. The commander of U.S. and NATO forces in Europe told senators on Tuesday that he anticipates more American troops will be needed long-term on the continent in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Temporary deployments of thousands of troops to Central and Eastern Europe to bolster NATO's east against Moscow have pushed the U.S. presence to more than 100,000 personnel, European Command Chief General Todd Wolters told the Senate Armed Services Committee at a hearing. But pressed about the need for an increased permanent troop presence on the continent, Wolters said the U.S. should examine its posture as well as that of allies, post-Ukraine conflict, with an eye to potentially more forces. I think what we need to do from a U.S. force perspective is look at what takes place in Europe following the completion of Ukraine-Russia scenario and examine the European contributions, and based off the breadth and depth of the European contributions, be prepared to adjust the U.S. contributions, Wolters testified. And my suspicion is we're going to still need more. Senator Roger Wicker, R-Miss, asked Wolters about beefing up the permanent U.S. presence in Europe, a push that's gained steam as NATO countries on Russia's periphery look to strengthen their defenses. Wolters appeared to leave open the possibility of permanent and rotational troops. Obviously, there's always a mix between the requirement of permanent versus rotational, and there are pluses and minuses of each one, the four-star general said. We'll have to continue to examine the European contributions to make a smart decision about where to go in the future. The surge in U.S. troops as NATO looks to dissuade further Russian aggression coincides with a steady flow of equipment and weapons, such as anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles, into Ukraine to repel Moscow's invasion. The U.S. has also made moves to buttress NATO countries on the alliance's eastern front, including approving tank sales to Poland. Lawmakers allocated billions of dollars in emergency funding for the troop deployments. Pentagon officials are also reassessing U.S. troop levels in Europe in the wake of the crisis. Assistant Secretary for Strategy, Plans and Capabilities Mara Karlin told lawmakers this month that the Pentagon would re-examine its global posture review to see what sort of troop presence, whether it's rotational or permanent, is necessary given this current security environment. In a separate exchange, Sen. Kirsten Gillibrand, DNY, asked Wolters if U.S. troop levels in Europe would change in the next few weeks. Wolters indicated those levels could go up, but said the decision would be based off conditions on the ground. We take a conditions-based approach and we look at the issues second by second, minute by minute, Wolters said. I would just tell you that based off the dynamic environment that exists today, that number could change. I suspect that it probably will, and in which direction will be determined based off conditions. Wolters has also consulted with the commander of U.S. forces in the Indo-Pacific, ADM, John Aquilino, on the U.S. and Allied response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine as a potential model for responding to Chinese aggression against Taiwan. Wolters said he and Aquilino are both very dialed into coordination between China and Russia. Their talks, he said, aim to help Indo-Pacific Command image a potential response as tensions flare in the region. We've shared thoughts about what Russia has done with respect to its physical actions in the vicinity of Ukraine and its activities outside of Ukraine with its so-called allies and partners and the impact that it has on the actual execution, Wolters said. ADM. Aquilino is obviously very interested in that because he faces a scenario that's reasonably similar to this with respect to Taiwan, he said. And how we examine the U.S. response, the allies and partners' response, will help image ADM. Aquilino in working his way through some of the tough spots that we anticipate that he'll have to work with in the future. Pentagon brass has warned that an invasion of Taiwan could come sooner rather than later, and say they believe Beijing is watching the invasion of Ukraine and the Western response closely.